In this video, we are going to see the line integrals. Let's say we have a vector r. A vector r of t is the same thing as x with the function of t. This is for I, and y also with the function of t, j, and also plus z function of t, which is for the value of k. So let this vector be the position vector of what? A point. Let's say the point are x, y, and what? And z. And let this vector r, with the function of t, define a curve what? A curve C that is joining P1 and what? P1 and P2, whereby t is the same thing as what? T1, and also t is the same thing as what? Is the same thing as T2. So respectively, let vector A of x, y, and what? And z be A1I plus what? Plus A2J plus A3 what? A3K will be a what? Will be a vector function of position that will define and continuous along what? Along C. Then the integral of this tangential component of what? Of, let's say, a vector A along the curve from what? From P1 to what? P1 to P2. So this should be written as what? This will be written as the integral of what? Of the P2 I said P1 to P2. So therefore of this P2 to P1, these are the limit P2 and what? And P1. So with what? With this vector A dot dr with the vector what? Vector r. So this should now be equal to the integral with what? With the limits at the curve dot the vector dot dr, which is the vector r. So this should now be equal to the integral of what? Limit as the curve will be a1 dx and also plus a2 dy also plus a3 dz. Okay, what I write here is an example of what? Of a line integral. If vector A in the force of a particle that is moving along what? Along C, then the line integral will represent the work done by what? By that force. But for instance, if curve C is what? Is a closed curve. What I mean by closed curve, which is assumed to be simple closed curve, that is a curve that does not intersect what? Intersect itself anywhere. So then the integral around what? Around this curve is often directed by what? Let me have some space. Will be often directed by the integral of what? Of this vector A with the same thing as what? dr, which is the vector r. So this is the same thing as the integral of a1 dx plus what? Plus a2 dy plus a3 d what? dz. In acrodynamic and fluid mechanics, this integral is called what? Is called circulation of what? Of, let's say, vector A about what? About a curve, about C, where the vector A represent the velocity of what? Of fluid in general. But we will not talk more on that. So any integral that is to be evaluated along a curve is called what? Is called a line integral. Such integral can be defined in terms of what? Of limit of sum as are what? As are the integral of what? Of elementary calculus. So guys, let's see some examples so that you will know more on what? More on line integrals. The question says, let this vector A and let C be what? Be the curve. So this is what? This is the curve, which is y is the same thing as what? 4x squared in the xy plane. Then evaluate the line integral of what? Of this from the point 1, 0, 0 to what? To point 2, 1 and 2. The first thing that I'm going to do here is that since the integration is performed in what? In xy plane. So then x is what? X, it is equals to 0. And y, the vector what? Y, the vector r, should now be equals to what? X I plus what? Plus yg. Then I have to say the integral of what? Of the vector a dot dr, which is c, which is curved as what? At the limit, and it is the same thing as what? An integral of what? Of 6x squared I. This is for I, this is for j, because I said the vector r should now be only this, because z is what? Z is 0, because we are not having for z, which is for what? For k. So then I have to say plus what? Plus 4x y squared j. So I have to dot it with what? Dot, I have to say dot dxi plus what? Plus dyj. So this is the same thing as saying the integral of the a dot vector a dot this dr will now be equals to the integral of what? Of 6x squared dx plus 4xy squared what? Dy, after dotting this. The next thing that I'm going to do here is that I can use two methods. So let's say method 1. This is the first method. The first method, I will first say let x it is equals to t in y it is equals to 4x what? 4x square, and y x it is equals to t in y is the same thing as what? As 4x square. Then the parameter equation of what? Of the CR, x it is equals to t and y is the same thing as what? And 4t square. So this y is the same thing as 4x square will now be equals to what? Let's say will now be equals to y is the same thing as what? 4t what? Squared. At the point, as we all know the point, which is 0 0 and what? And 1 2. And corresponds to what? Corresponds to t is the same thing as what? It is the same thing as 0, and also t is the same thing as what? As 1. So respectively, then this equation will now be equals to what? So I have to say the new integral of what? Of this c of a dot the vector dr, the vector a dot dr, and it is the same thing as integral of what? 1 to what? To 0. So this is 0 to 1, so which is 0 to 1, lower limit and upper limit. I hope you get it. So I have to say this 6x squared will now turn to 6t squared d what? Dx. Then I have to say plus what? Plus 4x. So 4x should now turn to 4t. Don't forget this is 4x. So 4x should now turn to 4t. You have to take note that this is y squared, but y is the same thing as 4x what? Squared. Y is the same thing as 4x squared. So I have to say open bracket 4 what? 4. This is 4x, so I have to put t. So this is 4t squared. And don't forget I have what? I have my squared in what? In this y. So I have to say whole square. So I hope you get it. So let me have some space in order to proceed. So this is the same thing as saying I have to say integral of what? 1 to 0 is the same thing as what? This 60 square, I will say 60 squared by what? So this dx, as you can see, I have to change it. It will now become d what? Dt by now. So this is dt. I forget to change it since, but I have to change it. So I have to say plus another integral of 1 to 0 of this what? Of this 4t and 4t square. So if I say 4t multiplied, this 4t multiplied by 4t square, I'll get what? I'll get 64t cube. 64t power what? Power 5. So then I have to say multiplied by what? dy. And don't forget, from here I have what? I have dy, and here I have dx. So I turn x to be t. So here I am having dy. So I have to say this dy should not be equal to d multiplied by the value of y. As I said before, the value of y, it is equals to 4x squared. So I have to say 4. Should I put the 4x squared? No, I'll put 4t squared, because t will now turn to what? To x. So I have to say 4t squared. So I have to what? I have to cancel this. Then I will delete, sorry, I will say d into what? Into 4t squared. Therefore, this should now become the integral of 1 to 0 of what? Of 6t squared dt plus the integral of 1 to 0 of 64t power 5 multiplied by what? If I differentiate this at the end, I will get 2, and then I will have 4 what? 40. I hope you get it. To differentiate 4t squared is the same thing as saying 4 into what? Into this 2t. This multiplied by this at the end, I will get 4 times 2, I will get 8 what? 8t. And also this 2 multiplied by 40 is the same thing as 8t. So it is all the same thing. So at the end, I will say this should now be equals to, if you integrate this, if I integrate this and then insert the limit, I'll get what? I'll get, if I integrate this 6t squared, so integrate it, I'll get 6t power 3 divided by 3, and 6 divided by 3 is the same thing as 2t power 3, and don't forget with what? With the limit 1 to 0. If I insert 1 at the end, I will get 2 what? 2 minus what? Minus 0. So therefore at the end, I'll have only what? 2. If I insert the limit of 1 to 0, because I will say 2 power what? 1 power 3 minus what? 2 power what? Power 3. So this is the same thing as saying anything that's 1 raised power of 3, it is the same thing as that 1. So multiplied by 1 is the same thing as 1. This multiplied by this will give me 0. So therefore I'll have only 2. Therefore the integral of what? Of this will now be equals to what? Will now be 2. So then I have to say plus, if I integrate this, first I have to multiply this multiplied by this, it will give me what? 80. 80 multiplied by what? Multiply 80 multiplied by 64t cube. At the end, I'll get 512. So this should now be plus 512 divided by 7. The 7, this is 5. If I add it to this t, it will now be 1. So if I add, it is equals to 6. And also don't forget, if I integrate it, I will add 1, it will now become 7. So that's why I put divided by 7. So therefore I have to simplify this. So this is the same thing as saying the LCM, which is what? 7. So this into this, 7 into 1, it will give me 7, and therefore 7 multiplied by 2, it will give me 14. 14 plus what? Plus this, at the end I will get 526. At the end, the final solution will now be 75.14. But don't forget, I have another method. There is another method, which is method 2. So let me show you the method 2. So let's say method 2. So you have to choose which method are you preferred with. The method 2, I have to substitute directly. Y is the same thing as what? As 4x squared. Where x goes from what? From 0 to 1. So you have to take note of that. Then I'll say the integral of this c of this vector a dot what? Dot the vector dot what? Dot dr, and therefore I will say the integral of 0 to 1 will be 6x squared dx plus 4x multiplied by what? By 4 x squared. Don't forget I have dy, so I have to say d by dy, y which is 4x squared. I hope you know where I get this. This is 4x squared, and therefore I have what? I have 4x. So therefore this is my 4x, and I have y squared, and I say y squared is the same thing as 4x squared, so I'll put 4x squared, as you can see from this. So the next thing that I'm going to do, but you have to take note that the difference between this method and that method, there are some mathematical manipulation that we did in the other method, but this method we are going what? We are going directly, and therefore there is no need of turning something to be what? To be t or something else in this method. So therefore this should now be equals to, if I integrate this, the same thing with limit, I'll get, but first integrate it, I'll have 2 cube, the limit 1 to what? To 0. Also plus, I have to integrate this, I'll get this 4 multiplied by 4, and then differentiate this. If I am to differentiate this, I'll get 8x. After differentiating this, so this 4x multiplied by what? By this 4x power 4. At the end I'll get 500 and what? And 12x power 6. So at the end the integral of 500 and what? And 12x power 6 to the limit 1 to 0. So this is the same thing as saying 500 and what? And 12 divided by this power plus 1, which is 7. So this is the same thing as saying also plus 500 and what? And 12 divided by 7 after inserting what? After inserting the limit. But from this first one, I didn't insert the limit. If I insert the limit, it will now become only what? Only 2. So therefore, the final solution of this will be 2 plus 512 divided by 7. LCM, I have to first find the LCM, which is 7. And therefore, this will give me 14 plus this. I'll have 5, 2, 6. 7 into 1, I'll get 7. 7 multiplied by 2, which is 14. 14 plus 7 into 7, which is 1. 1 multiplied by 512, it will give me the same thing as 512. So I have to say 14 plus 512 is the same thing as 526. So in fraction, this will